Nick, do you prefer games are great or terrible?
Ooh, tough question, but I will say I prefer them to be great.
It's 50-50, right?
Yeah, sometimes.
We're going to talk about things that make games great to us.
What's up, everybody? My name is Nick.
I'm Mike.
We are the Brothers Murph, and that's what we said. We're talking about things that make games great in our opinion. Now, you might have different opinions, so down in the comments, let us know what makes a game great.
What takes it next level for you?
And we're also not just doing like straight up mechanics, like make it a deck building game, because that's like a whole, we talked about our top 10 favorite mechanics here before. And so it's just like different things you can do. Some are very big, some are more aesthetic. Things you can do to make a game really, really great. There's a lot of them. Let's get into them.
Number 10, let's start off really simple with a specific thing for me. The thing that makes a game great is having a box, a base game box, that's big enough to fit expansions into the same box. I am all about consolidating space as much as I can and bringing things down into fewer boxes. I am not precious about expansion boxes. I get bummed sometimes when the art is cool, but I will throw it away, recycle, and put everything into one box if I can. So if you know you're gonna expand this game, and a lot of games do get expansions, please give just a little extra room. You don't gotta make like the final big box version out the gate. You don't wanna presume that much, but just give me some space to put the expansions in the box if you could. It's a specific gripe, it's maybe a petty gripe, but I really appreciate. Here's the thing, I will stuff everything I can in, rubber band it, and just hope for the best regardless. So if you give me a little bit more room, I have a little bit more feeling that I'm gonna succeed in putting things into less boxes. So that's my number 10, or our number 10.
Number 9 of our things that make board games great is multi-use cards. Cards are used in most games, or not necessarily most games, but a lot of games, obviously, because cards are great. You can do so many different things with cards, and I think the best thing you can do with cards is making them multi-use, and you can do that in a lot of different ways. You could have the top half of the card be for, say, battles, and the bottom half of the card be for something like the War of the Ring does that, where the top half is for like character actions you can do, and the bottom halves are always for battles. And so each one of those cards, you always have to choose, oh, do I want to save this for a battle because that's very, very useful, or do I want to use the top half of this because this is really, really great? And there's games like La Granja who have like 4-use cards. Like the left side is for like farming, the right side is for like upgrades, the bottom part of the card is for like different helpers on your farm, and the top half of the card is a contract you can use. Having a 4-use card is absolutely bananas, but I absolutely love it. I enjoy games like that where it's like, you have this thing, it has multiple options, you can only choose one of them, and that kind of strategic decision makes games so good, so crunchy, so wonderful, and multi-use cards is one of the best ways to do it. Multi-use cards are awesome, and they should be in every game ever, even if the game doesn't have cards. Just put one multi-use card in there, it makes the game 10 times better.
Number 8 is having a variable setup to the game. So, maybe that's tokens aren't all in the same spots. Maybe the spaces you go to and the order that things come out will change from game to game. Anything that you can do, a modular setup or whatever, to kind of create variety in the setup of the game means that every time we go in, even if the kind of actions and what you're trying to accomplish don't change a ton, I have maybe different opportunities or different obstacles based on how things are laid out, what is in play, what is maybe left in the box from game to game, based on just kind of like a random setup. So having variety in setup is a simple one that to me gives a lot of length to a game, adds a lot of replayability, and that's a big one for us, is that variable setup in games. I think it's a simple way to really extend the life of a game, just by having, maybe this action spot is not always right here, maybe it's over there. Now I have some choices to make, so that's a big one, variable setups.
Number 7 is, I think, one that we'll all agree on, and that is good player aids. And specifically, give a player aid for every single person. My lord, make player aids for every single person. Do not give me 1 player aid, give me 4 if it's a 4-player game. That's a whole other topic. But nonetheless, good player aids, I think, honestly make games significantly better, particularly if it's a big game. And I know publishers, there seems to be this fear with publishers of like, not making a huge player aid, because I'm not sure if they're worried that people will think their game is more complicated than it is or something, but like there seems to be this like hesitance to make extensive player aids. And I'm like, no, give me an entire sheet of paper. I talked about War of the Ring in the last number. War of the Ring has a double-sided like 8.5 by 11 or A1 size paper. We're American. Normal size piece of paper, double-sided with information on it. That is very, very needed. One of the best player aids in the game is for Twat and Suyu. Twat and Suyu is, again, full-size piece of paper player aid, but it has everything, all the information you need. It's so nice to have a quick reference. Also, if you're gonna have like a language independent player aid with symbols, make sure we can understand what those symbols mean. It's just, player aids are so, so useful. One thing I love about Board Game Geek is that almost every single game out there, someone in the forum, someone has made their own player aid. It's my favorite thing about Board Game Geek is people doing things like that, but they shouldn't have to, because board game publishers be the ones to do it. And again, God help me, make one for every player.
Listen, you know we talk about art a lot. We talk about art a lot. Art is important. You want to make a game great, you got to have that banger art. I want really solid art. To us, it's not acceptable to get by with something that's just decent. I want it to be transformative. I want to be whisked away into a different land by the art. I think it's super duper important. I will happily pay for that artist that makes the game great and stuff. I'll pay a little bit more for my game. That's something I'm willing to do. And so having fantastic art in a game really matters. And the main reason being, if you have bad art in a game, there's not many games that I would say have truly bad art, but they do exist. It's hard to get over. You know, it's hard to focus on the actual game because I keep getting pulled away thinking like, why? You know, and like artists and stuff are all out there trying to do their best, and I don't mean to demean any artists out there. Better than I could do by far, I promise you that. But having that next level art, it's just, we feel like we hit a ceiling. If you don't have really great art, the game will hit a ceiling at some point for us. And so we gotta have it, we gotta have it. That is art number 6.
Number 5 is low downtime. There's almost every game is gonna have some aspect of downtime, and downtime is where you're not taking your turn. You take your turn, and then you are waiting for the turn to get back around to you. One of the biggest like enemies of gaming, in my opinion, is games where you're just sitting around waiting for your turn. And some games, I understand that not every game can have like no downtime or really low downtime. Sometimes it just doesn't work that way, and that's understandable. But if your game has low downtime, I'm gonna like your game even more, because what I wanna be doing is I wanna be playing. And if I have to wait 10 minutes for my next turn, that's not that fun. That's 10 minutes where I am not playing this game really. I'm still paying attention to what people are doing, but you understand what I'm saying. And that's one thing, like, I think that, say like a game like Terraforming Mars does very, very well, where Terraforming Mars is a big game, lot going on, a whole bunch of stuff you want to do on your turn, but on your turn, you only get 2 actions. Now, that's not the end of your round. You just have to do 2 actions, and then it goes to the next person. And then when it comes back around to you again, you can do 2 more actions. And I think it's a really, really good choice in that game, because it keeps the turns moving. It keeps the downtime down, because that is a game where on your turn, you can do a lot. You can put in cards, activate these cards, do this, do this, do this. And if people had to take their entire turn at one time, if you're playing a full 4-player game, man, it might be 10, 15 minutes before it gets around to you again. And having it be 2, I think makes the downtime so much less. It also makes some of the decisions you make change, because certain people did stuff to change the outcome of the board and stuff. I think low downtime is something that every single game, even if it doesn't necessarily work out, every single designer should be shooting for low downtime if you can. It's absolutely great.
Number 4 is kind of important to us because Nick and I play games mostly at 2-player. A lot of games are made for fewer or more than 2 players, and that's totally cool. So I want a game that has scalability. I want a game that if it's, you know, even if it's a big kind of focus on a map game, if you have it from 2 to 4 player, I want it to scale down well. I want you to have things in place that are gonna make it so that it still feels like the game that you intended to make at a lower player count. Or if it's kind of really good at 2 and you add people in, I want the game to still work, still work well, still have the same kind of feeling. If you can keep the same feeling, the same kind of emotional beats of a game from all the different player counts that you list on the box, that is going to be huge marks from us. And it can be simple things like blocking certain spaces to make a map tighter, changing how many people can go to worker placement spots, like viticulture does that really well. Scalability for us is going to be really great because it gets in the way if we're like, man, this would be better at 3 or 4. And we don't typically have access to a 3rd or 4th player. So if you have a game that lists at 2 players, I really expect it to be able to scale down well. I know not all games are meant for that. And I know you're trying to make sales, so you're not going to say like it's only a 3-4 player game. You want to try to make it 1 through 4 if you can. But that scalability will take a game next level for us and really endear us to that game.
Number 3 is one that doesn't get talked about enough, and that is clear graphic design. I honestly think graphic design is probably the most important thing in board games, even more so than just like mechanics, because if your mechanics are not understandable because the graphic design is bad, then your game is unplayable. I think graphic design is one of those things that just you don't think about when you think about board game design, or I guess board game development and production, because it's more on the production side of it than the designer side of it. But clear graphic design is humongous. It absolutely makes your game playable. Making sure the symbols you're using, making sure just the layout of the boards, the layout of your player boards, everything is clear, everything is easy to see, everything is easy to understand. Again, having tons and tons and tons of symbols is great for things like language independence, but if you then can't understand what all of those symbols mean, it doesn't really help all that much. And so, good graphic design is very hard to do, especially nowadays where there's so much more really beautiful art in games. I think that's wonderful, but really, really beautiful art can sometimes be very busy art, and it makes graphic design harder to see. So that balance between art and graphic design is tough, and good art is important, and good graphic design, I would probably say, is even more important. So good graphic design is hard to talk about in that way, because it's like, it's just, you just got to do it, And so good graphic design is very, very important in a board game.
Number 2 is a big, broad category that's super important. This is diversity in games, and this is something that spans everything. This is diversity in who makes games, diversity in your artists, diversity in theming and the types of games we have out there, diversity in mechanisms, diversity in the cast of characters that you have within your game. So if you have 10 different people in your game, I'd like those 10 people to not look identical to each other. I want to see people from all over the world and see all people represented in games, seeing different places, different cultures represented in games. True diversity, and again, that goes from bottom to top, and we need to have people that are making the games, that are making decisions on what games get made, to have that diversity as well. That's going to make games as a whole, and I mean the hobby, go next level. So that is something that for us is super duper important. It makes a game richer, it makes a game make more sense, because there's all sorts of people here in the world, so it just makes sense to have all sorts of people in our games. That's not like, rocket science to us. That is something that's very important to this hobby, and something that we want to see a lot more of. We're on the way, we're making great strides, and we just got to keep marching in that direction. So number 2 for us, super important. You want to take a game next level, get some diversity in all facets of that game.
And number 1 for us is variable player powers, or some kind of asymmetry. This is kind of one of the things that's kind of like a mechanic. We didn't put again, full mechanics in this. This is kind of skirting that line, but nonetheless, variable player powers or some kind of asymmetry to us almost always makes a game better. Again, it's not necessary. Sometimes everyone's just exactly the same. You're just trying to beat each other. You're just trying to outplay each other. That's totally fine. But if you can make us different, give us a different starting power, getting us some kind of thing where it's like, oh, you start in this area, so that these kind of resources are available for you, but they're not really available for everyone else. So you then have to trade them or something like that, just some kind of asymmetry. And especially if you can give us different powers. Every single game, you get like 2 powers to choose from, and you choose one of those, and now you're different. It doesn't have to be like wildly asymmetric, like something like Root, where you're essentially playing a whole different game than the other person playing like the bird faction and the cat faction. You are playing 2 completely different games, really, even though you're on the same board. We don't need necessarily that much asymmetry, although that much asymmetry is very cool, but just some kind of variable player power. My favorite kind of expansion in any game is when they're like, hey, here's this game. One of the first expansions is now everyone has a power. And I'm like, yes, let's go. It's so much fun. It's my favorite thing in all games. Just make me different than everyone else, even just a little bit. And it's so, so good. It's our #1.
So that was 10 things that make a game great for us. They are always going to take a game kind of, again, to that next level. They're going to make the enjoyment all the better if you kind of do some of those things for us. But we want to know in the comments, what for you, it's like, if you do this one thing, I'm going to be a happy camper.
I'm here for it,
Put those in the comments
That's not
below.
just like, make the game good.
Yeah, it's like, please,
in the end, it needs to be
that's
just
a
good
given.
game in
Please
general,
make the
right?
game good, and then also do the 10 things we
Do
talked
these
about.
things,
Please.
yes. Indeed, but that's going to be it for us. My name is Nick.
I'm Mike.
We're going to get on out of here. We're the Brothers Murph. We'll see you later.
See you in the next top 10.